We've heard about climate resilience, financial resilience, generational resilience. So today, farmers having a reason to invite their children to be a farming generation tomorrow. We know we want to foster, build, and grow resilience, but do we really know how? We're living in a world today which is hammered by so many shocks that we've almost lost count. We cannot predict when the next shock is going to come. Some of the themes we're going to explore in the panel today is how, in practical terms, is resilience taking shape in supply chains. We're going to explore the link between credibility and resilience. Is it possible to build resilience in a way that is credible? Why is the link between the two important? But also, where do tensions arise? What are the trade-offs? So to get us started with a great panel and expertise from across sectors, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to take 2 minutes to give me your sense in your words of what does supply chain resilience mean to you in today's times. Dr. Abena, can I invite you to start, please?
Thank you very much. So, in 2 minutes, what does resilience mean to me? The first thing is consistency. From what we have all learned, it's important if you have to be resilient in the supply chain, your quality, your production, you have to be consistent. So consistency in the resources, in your processes and activities that are involved in production and distribution of commodities, that is what is resilience. And to be resilient, you have to be malleable. The supply chain, the SME, the company, you need to be malleable and be able to bounce back. This means that you have to be proactive. So I'd like to say that to be resilient, I have come up with 3 main, maybe I should say, pillars. 1, beware of what is changing in the environment. Beware, what is changing? I have a small company, and in my supply chain, what is the main change or driving force? Is it climate change? Is it standards that are coming? Market requirement? Beware of what is changing. And as you are aware, you keep putting things in place. Let me put here, in this context, one small example. For example, there's a new EU regulation on packaging and packaging waste. And this is going to, once it starts somewhere in August, if they don't change the deadline, it means a lot to all SMEs who are into packaging like dried fruits and everything that is being exported to the EU. So to be resilient, don't wait till it happens to you. You should know what these rules are, what it means to you, and get ready. The next pillar, if you ask me, for resilience is relationship management. You should know who your suppliers are, who your clients are, what they want, what do you also expect from your clients, and in your own space, be able to manage this relationship. And then thirdly or lastly, what I would like to call a supporting regulatory environment. I don't even know how I come to, but this came up because I'm realizing that too often SMEs or companies are suddenly, should I say, pounced upon by regulations and standards that are very far from them to, comply. But if you live in an environment where there are policies, frameworks from government, from associations that have put certain standards and, policies in place, and you begin to live by them, they sort of bridge the gap for certain standards that come on. I think these are some of the things we'll be discussing as we go on. So for me, these 3 things, pillars give up resilience. Be aware of what is changing. Find out what it means to you, and be sure of who your relations, your clients, your suppliers, manage your relationship. This will help you to even foster knowledge within your organization. And then, like we have all said, there's a need for everybody to cooperate. We hope for a regulatory environment that will support companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abena. Dr. Gyimah, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to mix things around a little bit. So you're, of course, a veteran forester. You have been in the Forestry Commission for many, many years, clearly having weathered many shocks, one can say. What does supply chain resilience mean in the context of Ghana's timber and forestry sector today?
All right, thank you very much. And I think I may go along most of the things that have been said by Abena. If we want to drill down, it will come up to some pillars. And then I would say visibility, meaning that you should understand your ecosystem. So for me, being in the forestry sector, we should be able to understand what is happening in the forestry sector, what changes are occurring, how should we position ourselves to be able to address these changes that are occurring. So that is important, understanding the ecosystem and where you are within the value chain. Then also flexibility, which she termed malleable. So you should be flexible because things might change. And when things change, how do you respond? And so flexibility is also very, very important. I'm sure in the forestry sector, you may have heard the things that are coming up. We have EUDR, we have FLECT also coming up, we have certification teams. So where do we stand in all these things? How do we position yourself so that you be flexible to accommodate all these different requirements that are coming up? So that is important. And not only in the government, but also the private sector players in the entire value chain. You should also go along the collaboration, as she said. So we are not living in an island. The supply chain is made up of players, actors. And so we should see ourselves as helping each other to be able to meet the end goal. And I think that is another important thing. Then there's a control pillar. Control here meaning that you should be able to make decisions from the supply chain. So that if things are changing and then we have to take a decision in the Forest Commission, what decision should I take to control the system so that an SME will not be affected, a small player, a large player will not be affected, yet the end goal will be achieved for everyone. So in a nutshell, I think this is what I can say about what it means as far as the forestry supply chain is concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Gyimah. Let's come to you, Emi-Beth. You are a first-time entrepreneur. You are chief exec of Kawa Moka Coffee. Tell us a little bit, what has resilience meant to you, and how is it that you even think of it as the owner of a small coffee company?
Okay, thank you very much, Vidya, and thanks for the intro. As you rightly said, I'm the founder and CEO of Kawa Moka Coffee Roasters. It's a sustainable social enterprise coffee company that works with farmers in the rural communities. So like Juliana and her family would be in the coffee sector would be, a relationship I would have. We work particularly with women farmers with the idea of inclusiveness in the value chain. And we also add value. So not only are we doing the raw material, but we're roasting and we're brewing. So today you'll also be able, thanks to you, taste some of our coffee from Ghana. So I'm sure a lot of people don't know that, there's coffee in Ghana, but today you'll be able to taste that coffee. So what does resilience really mean to me as an SME, as somebody working in the agricultural value chain? For me, it's shared risk. It's also local context. So, for example, today it's raining. We have a full room of people despite the rain. Anywhere else, it's like, oh, just grab your umbrella and come. It's not a big deal. It's just rain. But in Ghana, our local context might mean that you literally have a pool of water outside your house. So it's not just there's an additional barrier. So are we recognizing that local context and what that means for costs, what that means even for the risk of livelihoods as we're anticipating or calculating supply chain? So for example, something needs to be delivered by this day. How does the weather affect that? How does it affect pricing? So for me, it's really understanding that local context. The other thing that builds up from resilience is credibility, okay? So credibility, again, builds trust. when there's trust in a value system, it's easy. Because if you know where I buy my coffee from, you know how much I'm paying my farmers, you know the traceability, whether it's organic, whether it's not, it's easier for you to build those relationships. But how is that credibility established? And for me, a critical aspect of it is not to let the weakest players hold the heaviest risk. How do we share that responsibility? We need patient capital. We need buyers where the relationships are worthy. We know that it's not going to change from year to year. The standards aren't going to keep changing. And then we have to bear that responsibility of meeting those changing standards. So that's what resilience means to me, both as an SME and as somebody who works within the value chain with farmers.
Thank you so much. Daniel, let's come to you. You're a veteran in the palm oil sector. Everywhere in the world in sustainability, palm seems to be at the center of a storm. Tell us a little bit about your experience in the palm sector and what has either helped build resilience or what needs to happen.
Thank you very much, Vidya. I think you rightly set the tone. With a traded commodity like palm oil that has quite a reputation, resilience is just being ready for tomorrow today. Being ready for tomorrow today simply would be being aware of the changing environment, as has been said by the earlier speakers. The pricing of palm oil is determined in the international market. It can go up or down tomorrow morning without any notice, and you have to be aware of that. We do have a lot of stakeholders, mainly smallholders, whose activities can be managed and not managed, and their actions would impact what you produce. And being aware of those smallholders, the vulnerabilities and nuances, does impact your daily lives as well. Indeed, current trends also do impact our resilience. If you see, oil palm has a lot of, the uses of oil palm has a lot of substitutes, soya bean oil, sunflower oil, and that brings in a different dimension because you have to position yourself in a way that you can compete. And if you cannot be aware of things that are happening or things that will happen in the future, you cannot compete today. And as well, the multiplicity of concerns that people, stakeholders have. You rightly said that we have quite a reputation, and so every day there's a new certification target in oil palm because of its reputation. And all these impact your process, all these impact your cost profile, all these impact what you can do for the people who live on it. And you have to be aware of it and be prepared for it and develop systems, invest in people, invest in systems, improve your efficiencies today so that when the time comes and the storm comes, you can still have something to live on. So in terms of resilience for the oil palm sector, I would just put it in this nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all of you for those opening thoughts. You've all spoken very eloquently about the ideal. Resilience is about shared risk. Resilience is about knowing what the rule and having the capacity to adapt. I like what Daniel said. Resilience is being ready for tomorrow today. But clearly it's not that easy. It's very, very difficult. And in order to understand what needs to happen to build resilience, I think we have to have a conversation about the barriers. So let's talk a little bit about the barriers. And again, Abena, I'm going to start with you. Maybe both you and Emi-Beth. We heard from Juliana about barriers that producers face. Of course, the other set of actors who are really being hit hard right now are SMEs. Tell us a little bit about what are the main barriers that small and medium enterprises face to becoming resilient. Let's start with you and then maybe Beth after that.
Thank you very much. And I think in the discussions we've had so far, the barriers have really, come out strongly. So maybe what we are doing here is to summarize them. Now, the first point is finance. Having worked with SMEs, in different value chains, for me, it's mainly been the agro sector. The first barrier is finance. You see, when an SME or a company is being resilient, to be resilient, you need to be strategic. You need to be proactive in your planning. And this comes with money. And usually when SMEs are trying to access finance, it's usually either not available, or if it's available, it's expensive, or the bureaucracies, such long bureaucracy, and most of them, like we are saying here, that the first mile is very important. So by the time maybe someone has gone through all the processes and has finally got some amount of money to work, maybe the rains have passed. You understand? So you say on paper you have given him the money, but it came at a time when he really cannot use it. So there's a big issue with finance. All right. And then the next barrier, I'm skipping all the issues with finance because we all know, but the next barrier is the frequency of standards that are changing. You see, again, I'm talking for SMEs in this part of the world. Most of us, unfortunately, are standard takers. So there's a new standard, you have to comply. There's a new standard, you have to comply. And sometimes just when you are finished complying with one, then there is another. Now, like I said earlier, if you have to be resilient, then you must always have, tentacles looking out for these standards. And having, I had a short discussion with a few SMEs before I came. And one of them said, the most big issue is having the required expertise on ground. Somebody who has the knowledge to help you put the standard, requirements in place. And sometimes it costs money. You train them and then they go because somebody else will. So that is also a gap that a lot of people don't realize, and that breaks the rule for them. And then the last one, a point I would like to make here, is weak market integrations. When I say weak market integrations, I'm talking about the fact that sometimes these issues that we have listed put SMEs in the situations where they could easily lose a market for a while. Now, because you were not able to comply, you could not meet the market or the requirements of your client, so you lose it. Now, the next time you are able to comply, there is a gap. So accessing the kind of market you had before is becoming difficult. So those kind of weak integrations, is very difficult. One company said it affects timely delivery of supplies. And if, like my sister said earlier, there's a rain, there are issues locally, and you're not able to deliver on the right time, you lose the market, and then there is a gap. So I think these are the main barriers. They have the barriers of finance, and then being standard takers. And before I hand over to my sister, stressing again on the standard takers, it will take me back to the point I was trying to make earlier about having an environment that will support this. You see, sometimes the standards come and they are a shock. They are a shock because in our, like she said earlier, domestic or local environment, we are not complying with these standards. But when we have policies and frameworks that are set and benchmarked to some of these international standards, when we have to comply, the shock or the gap is not too wide, for us to achieve. Thank you.
Emi-Beth, any additions from your side in terms of the barriers?
I will talk about the farmer angle. Okay, so we started with 9 farmers, and we've grown to a network of 450 farmers, impacting 4,000 households, whether it's in seasonal work or in picking or trained work. And we're currently in an era of storytelling. Okay, we spoke about credibility, building trust, and being able to give you access to buyers. But a lot of that is the capability to build that credibility. For example, ITC, who is here today, supports the coffee industry with trips to trade shows where you can actually meet buyers. So they meet you, They get to see the face behind maybe the websites that they saw. There's some credibility in the institution you're affiliated with who are here, and that gives you that credibility, right? If you move that to the farmers, how many farmers even have the ability to get visas to travel? How many farmers are in a room when there's a policy that impacts them? How many farmers can speak directly to buyers about what they do to generate that credibility, to be able to have those resilient systems with their buyers? So I would speak to that being a major barrier. Dr. Abena has also spoken about the cash flows. Coffee is seasonal. There's a period where you can buy, which is when, it's harvested. So basically for the full year, you need to make sure that you have your cash flow ready to be able to buy for the full year. If you have any unexpected large orders in that time, you literally have to wait till the next season, or you need to make sure you're over. So there's a whole balancing act between overstocking or stocking just enough, which also creates stress, as rightly said. The other challenge for SMEs is also human resource, especially in the coffee industry. You train people. One, on the farmer end, again, labor is a challenge. We heard about older people being farmers, the average age being 50 in the past, and we're encouraging young people, but a lot of young people still want to leave the rural communities for the very same reasons that we've mentioned. Is farming a viable career, so to speak? Can it feed your family? At the time that we went into the community, we had challenges such as a coffee farm that should be given 15 bags, for example, in a year, would be doing 5 bags. How are you living on 5 bags for the entire year? Clearly, it's not possible. So a lot of the young people see the work that is involved. They see that it's not commensurate with the pricing and the value at the bottom end of the chain, and they wish to do other things. So that also becomes a challenge for us, both on the farm and on the other end, where we're also trying to train baristas, who are the people that make the coffee. It's a huge potential for employment, for skills, but every time they come, they learn, maybe they don't want to do it. Maybe they don't see the potential. So those become some of the challenges. And the same with things like quality. You want the Q graders, you want to be able to uplift your quality to meet all these standards and international demands. But who is the person here? At a point, we're supported by ICC to take our samples to Belgium for testing, to prove that they were of a certain quality. When does that come here? Those are all barriers to entry and challenges to resilience in our value chain.
Thank you both. And I'm conscious that, the list of barriers is challenging, but I think we should talk about the relationship between standards and resilience. We are at an ISEAL conference. ISEAL works with sustainability standards. All of you have had engagement with standards in one way or the other. And Dr. Abena, you said, in countries like Ghana, you're mostly standard takers, which is true, if you're at the export end of it. But there is research, there's a recent World Bank report that came out saying that standards are important for development. They can be a pathway to development. The question is, how do you get the balance, and what sort of capacity building and support is available to help build resilience with the use of tools like standards? So Daniel, I want to come to you. You have had experience with working with the RSPO, which is one of the best known standards on sustainability in palm oil. Tell us a little bit about, do sustainability standards help with resilience, and how do they help?
Yes, we not only with RSPO, we do SMETA, we do NDPE. And these standards help to conceptualize behavior. The agri-enterprise is a high-risk one. Of course, you are taking somebody's land to deprive him of a source of income. You would always have tensions here and there. Using these systems, these procedures, these are structured ways of, I would say, doing risk assessment and as well managing those risks. And once you are able to manage those risks, there's transparency, there's a lot of engagement. The RSPO standard encourages a lot of engagement. And in going through that process, you build that transparency, that cordiality with the communities. You are able to, as it is, continue to operate in a much more improved environment. In also continuing to renew your license, continuing to go through the audits, you correct concerns that come, living issues around decent work, health and safety. These are key concerns. Even if it is not key to the standards, for a good operation, you need to handle these ones. For an operation that limits cost, you need to manage these things so that you are in an operational environment where everybody is at peace. There's not much confusion. And so going through the process, it allows you to identify some of these challenges. It also becomes a way of working. You know, you set up your data, the data quality is good, you can do your performance tracking because all the processes are clear and helps you benchmark. You know, a key point, once you are going through the process of certification, it puts you at par with people who are in entities that are advanced so that you can benchmark and then see how you can close out those gaps. In closing the gaps, you improve and then you become more resilient for processes that are not yet in. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Dr. Gyimah, same question but different context. We were at a workshop yesterday where we were hearing about the Forestry Commission's journey over the last 2 decades to really set up your timber legality system, your timber assurance system, preparing for something like the European Union deforestation regulation. It is very burdensome. It involves a lot of work. But do you believe that the setup of all these systems, the tracking, the data, the traceability, the assurance, does that actually build resilience? Do you think there's a long-term good outcome here?
Yeah, I think so. It does. And if we look at resilience, we should also understand that if we look at standards, if you look at sustainability systems, they are all interconnected. And so you cannot leave one out. So it's like a triangle that goes around to reinforce each other. And then coming from the forestry angle, as you rightly said, even if you have a traceability system that is good and you don't have assurance with your resource base, what is there for you to be tracking? And so sustainability is very, very important. So once you have sustainability and it is built around systems, and standards are also built around systems, you tend to also secure your resource base so that continuously you can track your timber to wherever you want it to go to get a benefit out of it. So they are important. Sustainability is important to secure a resource base. And then also the standards also help you to work within a defined framework. And like my brother said, it defines behavior. So you cannot do things anyhow because in the long run, it will come and affect your sustainability, which in the long run will also affect your resilience. And so standards are very important because we work with principles, criteria, indicators, like the climate change issues we are talking about. If I allow over-harvesting of the timber, where will I get in the next 10 years to transport? And businesses are going to collapse because maybe you want businesses to make profit in the short term, but in the long term, they suffer. And so it's good to have systems, sustainability systems, and also standards to guide behavior. And I know ESG is coming up strongly, environment, social, and governance principles and criteria. And we are linking all these things to access to markets and even the climate financing. And so if we encourage these systems, we put the companies at a better place to be able to enjoy from these facilities that are globally going around. And we conserve biodiversity, and in the long run, we help mitigate the effect of climate change. So these systems are important because they reinforce each other, and then they strengthen the resilience that we are talking about. Without systems and then sustainability frameworks, we cannot achieve the resilience that we are all looking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, let's come to all of you. You all have been patient listeners. I'm sure there's a lot of expertise and a lot of thoughts in the room. I am going to come back to the panel for the last question on credibility and resilience. But before that, let's open up and maybe take 2 to 3 questions. I am going to really request our participants to be brief. Please introduce yourself, your name, your organization. And if you have a question or a thought, I request you to be brief so that we're able to accommodate more voices. Do I see any hands up? Would anyone like to come in? The gentleman there, please. Sir, please be brief, your name and your question or your comment.
Okay, so my name is Benjamin Brentu from International Justice Mission. I guess the latter part of the conversation struck a chord to me, and that is what, I've forgotten her name, the coffee maker mentioned, about the not allowing the weakest part in the chain to have the heaviest risk. So with the conversation around sustainability and standard, helping us to be resilient, how do we balance that out? That in as much as we want to be sustainable, risk is evenly shared in the supply chain.
Thank you so much, sir. Emi-Beth, do you want to take that question? And then maybe we come back for 2 more.
I'll respond in a pros and cons manner. As Vidya had prompted, there are some good things that come out of sustainability or having standards. So for us, some of that became being able to prove that the farmers have a global standard of coffee, right? Which attracted buyers. But what that also meant for us is that we had to be very particular about our buyers. Not everybody was our customer. That became very clear. So we have been able to identify customers who are able to support in things like pre-financing a shipment, instead of necessarily demanding, meet this order by this time or that time. What are your needs? What are the gaps that are there? How can we, beyond just buying the coffee, how can we support that gap? And when that happens, then we begin to share risk. But it did take a number of, no, we cannot deliver this to you to get to that point. So there is, that bridge where some of the risk is taken off us, both as SMEs and as farmers with limited resources, to be able to bridge that global gap imposed by standards and new ways of doing things. So that's one methodology.
Thank you so much, Emi-Beth. I think we can take 2 more questions. If there's anyone from the floor.
Vidya, I wanted to...
Please come in, Dr. Abena.
Oh, okay. So just to add to what my sister just said, that this is risk, and this risk you can see she's handling it with a relationship management between her and her clients. Another aspect of managing risk, like we are saying, is to have policies and governments and associations joining to, mitigate the risk. This is where you come in with training programs, you come in with technical support that will help people understand, the requirements of standard. This is where you have programs that will help them to access finance, in a supported way that will help. I just want to chip in one thing here. In Ghana here, there is the green, financing framework that has started. Unfortunately, it's not rolled out well. But the last time I had opportunity to study the document, looking at the opportunities that come with green financing, it means if companies are able to implement sustainable practices, it opens doors for financing that will help you. These are all ways of handling the risk. And I think, I know in a different forum, we could be able to implement or discuss such programs further. Thank you.
It's a really important point. Thank you for raising that, Abena, the link between financial access and standards. I think we have a hand up there. The gentleman in the dark shirt, please. So please be brief.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Victor Dankwa. I'm the CEO of Biko Farms. We are into vegetable production. One thing that I've observed that is affecting most of these production is lack of skills and knowledge. It's a major barrier because now you have AI, you have IT impacting the way we do things and so on. Most of the farmers that we see, they don't actually rely on these things. They don't use it to their advantage. So you have somebody who is cultivating tomato, for example, around where I'm doing my business. And she came to me and said, "Oh, my tomato is spoiled." Why is it spoiled? Because he was going to spray. He didn't read the weather to know that after spraying, maybe the rain will come and destroy everything that he's doing. So he told me, I said, "Look, tomorrow is going to rain around this time. Why are you going to spray?" So they leave the rain. The rain will not rain. I will spray. And then the next day it rained. And I went to him. I said, "Look, I told you yesterday it was going to rain." He said, "But you see, and these are some of the things I've observed across many of the small farmers. This is one of the barriers that is impacting them. Ability to rely on, IT, information technology, digital transformation, reading, knowing what is happening. So basically, this is what I want to contribute, adding to the barriers that you've been talking about. Thank you very much.
It's a great point, sir. Thank you. Access to reliable information, data, and something that people can really work on. I think we have one hand up there. Jess, if we can take a mic there to that end of the room. Sir, again, please introduce yourself. If you can please be brief, and then we can come back to the panel.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Richard Odrusikwatin, and I'm coming from Bomat Farms. Over the years, our emphasis has been on supply chain. That's moving commodity from one end of the chain to consumers. And it's important that as we look at resilience and then sustainability, we also refocus much effort on value creation, which is value chain. That we create value within the value chain, which looks at collaboration and partnership to create value and share the profit. In that case, the whole idea about sustainability will be helping the other to create value. So the farmer will not have the burden of pushing, but it will be a pull, which is coming from the consumer end. And so I want us to reflect on this and see how best we can look at the value chain rather than the supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Great thought, because we have an afternoon breakout session just on the topic of value creation. But Daniel and Dr. Gyimah, this whole question of not being stuck just exporting a raw commodity, but actually adding value. What are your thoughts to offer and the link with resilience?
It is the way to go, because then you are able to harness the value from the crop. But the journey will take a lot. Value creation requires a lot of regulation. Currently, for instance, there's exploitation of the competitive gap between oil palm and the other oils, and even oil palm from other sources of the world into Ghana. What it's doing is that those who produce oil palm locally are not able to earn the right price for their products because people are importing it, whether illegally or legally, at a cheap price. So if you even want to create that value, it comes with a cost. At what cost can you create it? And that is what comes in with more of regulation, more of support, more of funding, as Dr. rightly said. And also more of interventions that reduce cost. Interventions that makes cost efficient. Today, if you see the multiplicity of certifications that are coming in, and all these certifications, as they rightly said, you need to build capacity. You need to understand them. They are constantly evolving. To get certified is cost. So if you are not able to manage all these things, or if you are not able to drive the conversation, then you will not have enough to think about the next level of value creation. And that is where the conversation, the potential to create value is there within all the systems, whether it is oil, palm, cocoa. But what funds are available to do that value creation? Yeah.
Great point. Dr. Gyimah?
That is very important. And just last week, we had a program in Nantes, France. And so it's about wood show, exhibition of products. And if you look at the statistics we have in Ghana, our products that we are exporting, primarily, the primary products are constituted between 80 to 90%, either in a lumber form or round wood form, billets, which are not earning as much. The bit of progress we've made is maybe a plywood and a few downstream or engineered wood products. But the high value comes from the downstream processing, like furniture parts. That is where we are making the money. But our operators are stuck with the primary product. And so we took them to Nantes. We just returned over the weekend. They saw what others are doing, going downstream processing, and the value that they are getting. And it's sort of stirred their mind that this is the way to go. It has been on our policies since the 80s, but we are not making conscious efforts to go downstream processing. Because if you do certification, if you do sustainability, it all comes with money. And so you're able to recover those costs when your operation is efficient, and then you are entering into downstream processing and you are getting more value out of the wood. The important link with resilience is that when you do a lot of downstream processing, your waste utilization becomes efficient. There's minimum waste in your value chain, because what somebody would term as offcuts or waste, you are converting it to a product and you are gaining money. So I think the point that gentleman raised is very, very important. We should add value to the product that we are exporting, and so that it doesn't come in a raw form, but it comes in value added, and that you can gain some money out of it. But one barrier that I think maybe we are also overlooking is inertia from the companies, and then the culture of corporate organization. Because the moment you want to introduce anything new that you think will improve upon the system, there's inertia. People are comfortable with whatever they are doing, and then they don't want to veer into, but the world is changing. And so inertia and then corporate organization culture also needs to be looked at so that people can change, adapt, and then move forward. So this is something that I wanted to add to the barriers. And then the silos we talked about yesterday, operating in silos without integration. These are all barriers to resilience. We have to open up the intra and inter-agency cooperation so that we can move forward on these lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gyimah. I know you want to come in, Abena, on this question of value addition. Please go ahead.
Just one small point to add to what he said. He talked about, adding value like, furniture parts. And from when I used to work with the Ghana Standards Authority, and we had problem when it comes to these parts being exported. The problem is compliance to standards. You see, that it is the reason why a lot of people are not venturing, because once you get there, you must comply. You must comply to the standards. And so it brings us back to the need to train, the need to teach people to take standards and all that. And I think we should be conscious of that as we are talking about adding value. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I do want to bring the panel to a close, but not before I get your final thoughts on the relationship between credibility and resilience. So we're going to go around for one final set of thoughts from all of you. Why do you think credibility is key for building resilience? And your one recommendation to people in the room on how they can strengthen resilience. Who would like to go first?
Okay.
Go ahead,
I'll
Daniel.
Yes. Not without doubt that credibility is important, because whatever you do must be grounded in transparency, and people must be able to reflect on it without any question. And so all value chains must aim to gain that credibility. In terms of what can be done to strengthen that and also enhance resilience, there should be a lot of collaboration between standard setting bodies and government agencies. Because you see, today, if I subscribe to a certain set of certifications and I have another neighbor who is not, his cost profile is less than mine because he's not going through certification. So if there's not that level of collaboration to make it a common norm for everybody, then he has an advantage over me, a competitive advantage to sell his product. Let's be minded that today disposable incomes are low. We have just come out of inflation and all those things. So the buyer is just looking for a commodity. Just in my case, just an oil to fry his egg or his yam. He's not looking for certified oil or non-certified oil. So we need to create that collaboration that makes the demand for certified products a commonplace. Then we can all have yes, today certification is voluntary, but we have come very far. It is time that we have to drill it into a governance system so that everybody would be comfortable subscribing to it. That will be my closing comments.
Thank you, Daniel. Go ahead, Dr. Abena.
Thank you very much. And I think his answer has explained what I was trying to say by having a supportive regulatory environment so that, the pressure is not on one person. But to talk about credibility and resilience, for me, I think I would like to end by stressing that in my earlier submission, I forged pillars for resilience. And I think one of the key pillars is relationship management. And credibility is very crucial to have a good relationship management, because if you don't have a good relationship with your suppliers or your clients, you find that there will be a break. And it is very, very evident in our environment, especially with farmers like pineapple farmers and the coffee producers. They always have outgrowers that they work with, and they invest in those outgrowers. They train them. For example, Bomat spoke about value addition, and they work very hard in making sure that their outgrowers are complying to global GAP because they must buy from them. So you invest in these outgrowers. If you finish and they don't bring you the fruits, then you are going to have a break in your... So having that kind of good relationship to enhance, credibility is very important. So all the tools required for credibility must be put in place. I'd like to end by saying that I'd like to end here. Thank you very much.
I'm going to go to Dr. Gyimah and then come to you, Emi-Beth. Dr. Gyimah,
Right.
Your last words, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I think I would say that a credible timber supply chain guarantees stability. It guarantees stability because if you have stability, then it means you are having a good foundation for resilience. And one thing that is also important for us to realize is that diversification is also important. Now we have several systems running. We have the EUDR, we have FSC, we have legality. So if a nation like Ghana can do all these things simultaneously, it gives you stability. So whichever market demand comes, you are prepared to meet. And so that is one thing I want to say. Stability is important for a resilient system, and then we should be conscious to diversify so that we don't rely on one market. And then you are able to sail through difficult times.
And diversify. Emi-Beth, I'm going to give you the last word because after this, we're all going to go have a taste of your coffee.
Excellent.
So your last word, thoughts on credibility and resilience, and then we close.
I always say credibility for whom, right? Especially in the coffee value chain. There's so many, every coffee product, or most coffee products that come out of Europe have some sustainability stamp on them. They'll have, something. And none of them have access to any of the farms or any of the growers who enable that certification. You have your exporters, you have all of those people, middlemen, and they get the certifications. So my call to action perhaps is to flip the script, right? Because we talked about value addition, where if we're drinking our own coffee, who then determines whether it's a credible coffee or not? We have buyers who are coming from Europe wanting to buy our coffee because it's good. Now you have that UNIS to then make sure that the coffee then passes through all those sustainability standards. So let's also work towards flipping the script of the, the person being responsible for proving that credibility being the weaker person in the chain. Let's flip the scripts. And we can start that by drinking more coffee from Ghana right after this.
What a lovely thought to end the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking our panelists for such a rich exploration of themes of resilience, credibility, and sharing all their experience from their sector lens.